Welcome, friends, to another episode of Speaking from the Heart. This is where we draw inspiration from the gospel and bring it into our everyday lives, whether that's in business, work, or in our personal lives. And today, we step into a theme that touches every one of us. Forgiveness is always healing, but we often act with guilt rather than with forgiveness. Hi, I'm Richard Fontenay, and to be clear, forgiveness is not something spiritual. It is also a path to freedom and healing. Yet, so often, we carry guilt with a heavy backpack, weighing us down in our relationships, workplaces, and in our personal leadership skills. What if instead of acting from a place of guilt, we chose to live and act from a place of forgiveness? I devoted a chapter on forgiveness in my book, Eternal Unfolding, a journey that turned into a different kind of love story. You can find it on Amazon. I also included it in a ebook, Servant Leadership, from the FM storefront. You can find both books in the description below. Now, I've also provided a free bonus for you with this podcast. That link is also below. Now let's turn to the gospel teaching on forgiveness. The Gospel of Matthew in chapter 6 gives us a powerful word from Jesus. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Forgiveness is at the heart of the Christian life. It's not about pretending that wrongs never happened, but about releasing their hold on us. We also hear from Paul in Colossians chapter 3, bear with one another and forgive one another if you have grievances against someone. Forgive as the Lord has forgiven you. Notice the invitation. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. It's not optional. It's foundational to Christology. In this way, I'm reminded that it is only through love that hate is destroyed. It is only through love that forgiveness is experienced. It is only through love that we can forgive others, especially our enemies, just as Jesus forgave his. Think about those who forgave the unthinkable. The father who forgave his high school son's killer. The wife and mother who forgave her husband's murderer. Those who lead nations in reconciliation and forgiveness. The prisoner who forgave his captors. And the father who forgave his drug-addicted son. Now, many of these individuals were Christians, but not all of them. All, however, were Christ-like in their forgiving actions. So why did these people forgive their enemies? Well, I'm sure it was because of their Christ-like faith, but also because they did not want to carry the burden of guilt by not forgiving. Fortunately, we're not asked to forgive our enemies the same way as I just described. Instead, we are called to forgive others in our daily lives at work, in our interactions with others, and in our personal relationships. And let's consider forgiveness and guilt from that viewpoint. First, forgiveness breaks the cycle of guilt in leadership and work. Too many leaders make decisions driven by guilt. Guilt for not being perfect, guilt for failing, and guilt for disappointing others. When guilt drives leadership, it often leads to micromanagement, poor communication, or even anger. Forgiveness, however, brings clarity and compassion. And that compassion must also be given to leaders themselves, so that leaders can forgive themselves for mistakes that they make, so that they are free to grow, innovate, and encourage others without fear. Here's a story about a business owner who admitted he carried deep guilt over a failed product launch. Instead of forgiving himself, he continued to overcompensate, pushing his staff harder, second-guessing their work, and stifling their creativity. And when he finally allowed forgiveness to enter, not only for himself, but also toward those he blamed, his leadership shifted, and the atmosphere changed from fear-driven to trust-driven in his workplace. Second, forgiveness heals relationship in the workplace. Guilt festers. We see it in offices where mistakes are not forgiven, and people silently carry resentment. Workplaces become toxic when forgiveness is missing. However, when we offer forgiveness, whether for a missed deadline or an unfair commitment, we foster a culture where people can breathe, learn, and move forward. Here's a story about a manager who held a grudge against an employee for a costly mistake. Instead of firing him, she chose forgiveness. She sat down, acknowledged the pain, and also spoke with grace. Now that employee not only stayed, but became one of the most loyal and productive team members because he was transformed by the healing power of forgiveness. Third, forgiveness liberates our personal lives. Outside of work, guilt shows up in our families and friendships and even in our inner conversations with ourselves. We replay moments when we didn't fulfill the role of parent, a spouse, or friend that we wanted to be. Acting out of guilt often causes us to overcompensate, to control, or avoid. Forgiveness frees us. It allows us to show up fully, honestly, and to enjoy our relationships. Now here's another story about someone who hadn't spoken to his brother in years due to a dispute over finances. The guilt of what I had done haunted him. And finally, he reached out with a single text. "I forgive you. Can we talk?" And that step broke years of silence, and slowly the healing began. So what does forgiveness mean for us today, in our businesses, our places of work, and in our lives? Can we agree that it means we stop letting guilt dictate our decisions? Can it mean we can choose healing over hurt, and freedom over bondage, and love over resentment? I invite you to reflect with me what insight, work, or phrase resonated with you today. What touched your heart? And what can we do, you and I, to turn this teaching into action in our businesses, our places of work, and in our lives? And how can we share this reflection with others, bringing forgiveness into our workplaces or our families? Friends, forgiveness is always healing. When we act from a place of forgiveness rather than guilt, we become instruments of peace and hope. And with that in mind, I have a free bonus for you. A reflective journal that prompts on forgiveness as a path to healing. And you can access that also below. Now, as we look ahead, our next episode will delve deeper into this theme, letting go and finding peace within your deepest self. I can't wait to walk with you on that one. Until then, may you live with a forgiving heart, both toward yourself and toward others. I'm Richard Fontenay, signing off for now. Bye now.